Hey YouTube, time for another Airsoft video. This one's for you KWA MP9 fans. This is specifically about the Hephaestus MP9 holster, which may or may not be for you. We will find out how well it works for me. I decided to take a gamble so that you don't. I haven't seen very much or anything about this online, so why not give it a whirl? So let's talk about philosophy of use and use case. As a primary, this is great. It's light, it's compact, great for CQB, clearing corners. I have no problems running a sling off of this one-point sling mount. When I'm running it as a primary, this is typically in my hands or at the low ready position. So this magazine is unlikely to accidentally come loose by having this button accidentally depressed. However, if I'm running my Mark 46 LMG as a primary, and I want to run this as a secondary, because, you know, LMGs never go down, this ends up flapping in the breeze. The magazine extends the length and it bashes into other objects. It's pretty heavy too, so it might get damaged or damage something. This button, as stiff as it is, may end up getting depressed, leading to a $80 Canadian magazine becoming lost. Not to mention that just generally bashing around your airsoft gun into concrete walls or other objects, generally a bad time. So this holster is a little bit different than what you might expect. It retains on the muzzle and the trigger itself. As a side disclaimer, all the items in this video are airsoft. They've been pre-cleared, but I will clear them for the camera anyways. Airsoft, and it's cleared. This is a Serpa style holster with a side push button, and I've actually modified all these to use Safariland MLS plates. But your standard holster, you have a retention that is friction based on the sides and locks in on the trigger guard itself, so you can't pull this out without depressing that button. And that button, you can see it retracting there, actually latches onto the trigger guard. Here's another example. This is a level 3 style holster meant for an M9. Again, airsoft, and it's been cleared, so there's a primary and a secondary release. And again, airsoft, and we are clear. So either way, these style holsters are great for your small handgun style airsoft guns. Only catch being, how would you design something like this for something like that? Especially because the bottom rail geometry can be a little bit different depending on attachments, and I suppose any top rail attachments as well. Because you'll note for this style holster, it encompasses the entire handgun. And same for this Glock, it encompasses the entire handgun. Enter the Hephaestus holster. I've already opened this just to make sure it works, but we'll get into the details. This holster is designed to latch onto the trigger itself, but prevent fingers from getting into the trigger and accidentally triggering it. So this would be, and it's handed, unfortunately, which means you have to have it in a correct, or on the correct side, otherwise it gets a little awkward. You would latch this front muzzle device on, and then this slips through the trigger guard, and generally it prevents you from getting your fingers in here and having a negligent discharge. But not only does it prevent you from getting your finger in here effectively, it also prevents the trigger pull. This is airsoft and it's charged, but you can see here it won't trigger. Once you press that button and release, and you're clear of it, you see that piece of plastic there. That's what's interfering with this. So from a safety standpoint, it seems like a reasonable alternative. I am generally not a fan of holsters where you have to put your finger here, especially for airsoft or shooting sports, namely because you do not have to have super quick draw for airsoft. I mean, come on, let's face it, this is pretend airsoft BB wars, tactical LARPing, whatever you want to call it. you do not need a split-second draw from your holster at the risk of a negligent discharge because your finger is near the trigger guard. So I'm already taking points off because in order to actuate and release your holster here, you have to push the button and put your finger in the trigger guard. Maybe with practice you learn the discipline to not accidentally trigger it, or you build the discipline to always make sure that the airsoft gun is not charged, in which case it actually increases your draw time because you have to take it out of the holster and then charge it. So, I'm already kind of not too much of a fan of that design, but let's keep going. The holster itself appears to be a injection molded ABS, not even nylon design, and it actually looks a little bit modular because there's this plate here held on by these 4 screws, as well as that one screw holding on the trigger guard mechanism. And Hephaestus does make a series of holsters based off of this back plate, so my suspicion is they change out these parts to fit different airsoft guns. Okay, so there is one other problem that I've discovered with limited testing here with this release mechanism. The button here tends to bind up if you have pressure already on the mechanism. Let me describe that a little bit more clearly with images and moving video. This catch, this surface here interfaces with your trigger guard. If there is binding pressure in this direction, i.e. you're trying to pull this out and lift it out of the holster, this button binds up. You'll see here when there's no pressure, this button actuates pretty smoothly. But once you holster your MP9, if you press, so say this is a fixed plate on your belt, if you press inwards on the gun and then push the button, it releases just fine, and your finger ends up outside the trigger guard. But if you do not press the gun in, so I'm going to simulate it by pulling this out. I'm going to pull this plate out, simulating this gun being pulled outwards as if you're trying to lift it out of the holster in a hurry. You'll note that you need a lot more force here. I'm pushing with a lot of force here, and it binds up very readily. Could this mechanism be at fault? Potentially. Before I even mount this to anything, I'm going to take it apart. Alright, I think this is going to be one of these. Nope. One of these. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so we've got a flathead countersunk machine screw on this button. It does feel spring preloaded, so this may grenade all over the place. Okay, so we've got a spring and a couple buttons here, or a couple pieces I should say. It looks like there's a bit of thread locker applied here, or it's just a bit of grease. Oh, no, there's very little thread locker, if any. So we're going to undo that back nut. Here we go. Okay, so it's, this nut is steel. There's got to be a way to disassemble this, unless this is like a 2-part molded part. This looks like it's a single piece molded part. I just can't figure out how to release this pin. So you can't push it in and twist it, can you? Oh, there we go. Yeah, you have to push this in to release this screw. Alright, so we've got a steel nut, a steel push button, and the catch itself is, we'll find out in a second. Can I get it out? And we have an aluminum catch. Yeah, alright. We got a steel spring, a steel push button and screw, a steel nut. Steel spring has to be, you can't make a spring out of aluminum. But the actual piece that interfaces with your airsoft gun is aluminum. So if there's any part here that's going to wear out prematurely, it's going to be this thing. It could be aluminum or it could be zinc. It's probably aluminum, based on the luster of the worn out patch that I've already generated from clicking this in and out a few times. So let me push the camera zoomed in, and we'll get a close-up of how this mechanism works. Okay, so in a nutshell, when you push the airsoft gun into the holster, you're pushing it in this way. There is a ramp on the catch. Also, it's way out of focus. Okay, gonna try my best to keep this all in focus here. When you push... This is also shaking. Okay, I'm gonna do my best to keep this in focus and in frame. This is the arrangement of the parts inside this housing. When you push the airsoft gun into the holster, it pushes on this outer ramp, and there is a ramp here that pushes this spring catch backwards. That allows your MP9 to go into the holster. Then the spring pushes this catch back, and it's retained because there's no ramp on this side. It's just a flat. When you go to press this button, the ramp on the catch pushes down on this catch, and it slides it backwards, retracting it into the housing. Now, steel and aluminum doesn't give me warm, fuzzy feelings. In theory, there's going to be low wear. I'm probably going to put a little dab of silicone PTFE grease while I'm in here. So let me just go grab that and put that on. This is probably one of those instances of the bigger the gob, the better the job. So I'm just going to grab some on a toothpick here. And just put that on the wear surface. Doesn't hurt to lubricate here. Now, it also looks like this screw, when it tightens down, just sits on the flats, and its retention is the fact that it's backed up by spring pressure. So even if this comes a little loose, this spring is going to actively want to compress this button together. So I'm not really worried about having to thread lock this particular backing nut. And the button goes in this way. Alright, so yep, that works. I can press it in, I can pull it back out, work the lubricant a little bit more in there. Perfect. Put the backing nut on, give it a good old tighten. Alright, don't need to over torque it. I do not need even that much, so I'm just going to put that all back in there. Waste not, want not. Alright, so now I've got this spring. Spring's loaded in. Press this into place. Hold the button in. And put my machine screw in. Now, actually, hang on a second. We're not done here yet. Alright. Here's a pet peeve. Machine screw. It's out of focus. Machine screw. Plastic threads. Don't do this. If you're a product designer, don't put threads for machine screws into plastic. The dimensions here are meant for aluminum or steel. They will strip this out fairly quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if one solid knock to this strips out the thread and causes this to fail. Now, also if you over torque it, that would cause it to strip out and fail. You'll notice here, these are all plastic threads. I am not a fan of that. So, more points off. Not that there's really a score. Let's put this all back together in a really annoying to assemble fashion. I'm sure that they have a jig when they build this at the factory to prevent this exact grenading. Alright, screws started by hand. Let's not over tighten it and strip it out and ruin it. Alright. With a little bit of super lube, it feels a lot better. Still binds up when you press the button with a preload, but generally the button feels much nicer to use and it clicks in smoother. So, if you buy one of these, open it up, put some silicone lube on it, you'll be fine. Okay, it is at this point that I want to mount this onto my rigger's belt. I have run out of spare MLS plates, so I'm actually going to steal this one, and hopefully these screws are long enough to work. Otherwise I'm going to have to find some what look like M5 screws. I'm going to have to try and find some for my parts bins. Either way, one thing I will note is that the Safariland hole pattern and the Blackhawk hole pattern are slightly different. So I've dremeled out this Safariland plate to permit me to mount a Blackhawk style mount onto the Safariland plate. Now, because I barely use my M4, or not M4, M9 ever, I'm gonna just steal it from this, and, well, we'll see. Alright. You'll note that this actually has injection molded brass inserts for the machine screws. This is what you want to do as a product designer. Yep, okay, that'll line up just fine. You know what? I'm doing this wrong. There, now it's not going to go anywhere. Perfect. No, okay, that works. There's like an entire centimeter of thread that's unutilized. Let's see here. Yeah, it's actually about a centimeter of thread that's underutilized. Unfortunately, the only M5, are these M5s? They're definitely M5s. No, maybe not. Oh no, they're definitely M5s. Yeah, the only M5 screws I have are... Oh, they might actually be the right length. That is a little precarious, but at least I'm using full length on the threads. I'm actually proud a little bit, but yeah, we'll make it work. Now, does this plate still interface? Barely. It works. Time to test this out on a holster, on a rigger's belt. For those of you not familiar with this style of belt, it's a two-piece belt with hook side Velcro on this side and loop side on a belt that attaches directly to your BDU pants. And I've got this holster plate mounted here. It's a little bit loose just from wear and tear, but it does the job, and I can attach different holsters in here. So I'm going to move the camera and set that up. Okay, I've gone ahead and set up my belt as I would with a Glock for airsoft. Forgive the beer belly, the pandemic has not been kind. Either way, this is what it looks like with the Safariland MLS plate. Draws just fine. Needs a little bit of muscle memory to get it holstered correctly. So let's ditch this plate and attach the Hephaestus holster. I'm doing this rotated 90 degrees. Alright, that's in there. How well does this work? Is that in? It's in. I mean, it feels like it's a lot of weight, and it's certainly getting in the way of my elbow. So if I was to use this, I would use it on a drop leg rig. But in terms of unholstering it, it seems to work okay. In terms of holstering it, probably a lot of muscle memory that you'd have to employ. With a stick magazine. Also, no BBs loaded, and I made sure it's not charged. Magazine in. It's a little unwieldy, I would say, in terms of weight, trying to run around. It's going to want to wander around a lot. It's going to put some strain on your belt rig. I would say that if you are thinking about this holster, maybe don't get it. If you want to put it on your plate carrier, that could work. If you want to put it on drop leg, that could work. I don't have a drop leg rig handy with the receiver plate already attached to it, but nothing's stopping you from mounting this or some other plate onto Molly. And this does work okay. I can unholster it just fine. I mean, if I really was foolish, I could holster it with the slide extended, and now it's completely in my way. I'm going to just move this around a little. Yeah, so you could holster it, but unholstering it and going to high ready, totally feasible. And then reholstering it, you just have to kind of learn where it goes. You don't feel a really positive click when it lands, right? If you compare a Serpa style holster, you feel a positive click when it goes all the way home. Whereas this, it just kind of has a soft, spongy attachment. There's no assurance that it's gone all the way in. But on the bright side, unless you actively push it in to release it, you're not going to accidentally release it. So, in terms of retention, I'm not afraid of this thing coming loose. I'm more afraid of the belt mount breaking, and I think this would be more designed for a drop leg, and maybe you still want to put some kind of retention bungee on it. Maybe it's a bit gimmicky, I don't know. I'm going to have to actually try this out at some games and maybe actually attach it to a drop leg. I have a spare one in storage, but I just don't feel like pulling it out for this video and rigging up the MLS plate. So I think that's going to be it for this video. I might post a follow-up if this works out well. I mean, from a standpoint of practicality, you do have to pull your arm pretty far back, but then again, that's how you adjust your belt. This is set up more for a pistol where it's a little bit lower when you draw. This really wasn't designed for an MP9. But I'll take it. I mean, nothing's stopping you from mounting it to the front of your plate carrier, potentially. in which case you can just have it attached here and you know, press the button to release it. I might have to do that if I can get that to work. There's still some more experimentation. Either way, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment, leave a message, hit the notification bell, all the things that the algorithm likes. Otherwise, let me know what you guys have done for your MP9 holstering or retention, because a shoulder sling or a one-point sling tends to flap around a bit too much for me. And this may still be a slightly better option as long as I can get it lower down on my leg. Until next time, peace out.